The word mindset is bothering me. Have you come across the word mindset?
Yeah, sure.
Recently a lot?
Not a lot.
Yeah, I'm just seeing it. I'm seeing it all over the place now. Mindset. What in the heck do we mean when we say mindset? It's like you've got that mindset. You've got that liberal mindset, or you've got that
Right.
blah,
Yeah,
blah,
we've
blah
talked about this
mindset.
before. It's like keeping it real.
Yeah.
So like
what does this mean?
You're trying to foreclose an argument by using a word.
You've just got a different mindset. Like we don't speak the same language.
Right. You're just different. And therefore your arguments are meaningless.
Right.
Your views are meaningless.
It's garbage. It's garbage.
You're
a garbage
subhuman.
word.
You're not a human being. So
you're a victim of a different mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sick of it.
That's a happy way to. I can tell you've been having a good.
Yeah.
What was your last cup of coffee? Or do you drink coffee?
I'm drinking green tea. I'm drinking matcha green tea, which is really quite nice, but I think it makes me a little aggressive. I should go back to coffee.
Well, for like several years now, I've been drinking like Nescafe.
Oh yeah.
And then, so in my new, I got to tell you, I don't want to jinx it, but I'm really digging Syracuse. So I got on my bike and I biked down to Recess Coffee.
Nice.
Like 6 blocks away. And I got their medium, 12 ounce medium roast. And it blew the freaking top of my head off. I was like, oh, so this is what really, and I had like the most productive, I got more done this morning than I've gotten done in the last week. I was like that quote I sent you from Mark Lehner, I'm composing a haiku while scratching my borzoi tummy while I clean the Venetian blinds. Man, these methadone suppositories are out of sight. That's the way I was this morning. So I'm gonna make a few more visits to Recess and see.
Yeah, no more cowboy coffee for you.
No more Nescafe, baby.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah, that's fantastic. You've got a reliable cafe you can go to. You can try the dark roast, the light roast, the medium roast, the blah blah. I don't believe in complicated coffee drinks. That's another thing. That's your
mindset.
My mindset is
fuck your coffee.
Your mindset. I don't want to drop another F.
Let me tell you about my mother.
Yeah. F your replicant mindset. So I don't even know what I was talking about. Oh yeah, complicated coffee drinks. I'm not alone in this. I mean, if you're going to Starbucks and you're going to buy like a milkshake with some coffee in it, it's a milkshake. It's not a coffee.
Oh, you sound like such a cranky old man.
Yeah, I am. That's what I am.
Yeah, but honestly, I agree with you. It's like basically Starbucks has morphed into Baskin Robbins with a higher caffeine content, basically.
Yeah. And maybe it started with the Italians. The Italians created the latte so that the kids could drink coffee, right? But nobody.
Is that true?
No, it's a kid's drink. It's a latte. It's mostly milk. So Americans are drinking like children's coffee, with a lot of sugar in it.
I like latte. So latte. So lattes is one of these complex coffees that has earned your
not
disdain.
A latte per se. Latte in itself is not complex. It's it's puerile, but it's not complex. Yes, I said it.
I'm glad this is not a visual podcast because our listener would see the look of abject horror on my face. Puerile. Look, the flag is on the field for several things at the same time. We are not going to use words like puerile.
Puerile or puerile? I thought it was puerile. Puerile? Like Pueblo? And another thing.
Don't send smoke into the air here. Don't cloud the issues. Okay, with your mindset.
My puerile mindset.
I agree with you, which is that I just like getting a 12-ounce Pike's Place drip. That's it.
Yeah.
It's like a pack of Marlboro Red. It's like a Fender Stratocaster. It's an American classic. It's like a yardstick. It's like the meter stick in Paris. Everybody refers to it. It's like an American classic.
Yeah. And when I'm home,
Yeah.
I'm not going to Starbucks at home. I mean, but Starbucks on the road was a lifesaver because you didn't know that there would be a Reese's coffee or a recess coffee.
Recess. RECESS. Yes.
Yeah. Here it's I forget the name of the one that I go to, but there are a number of them.
Yeah.
But there's at Starbucks, they did for a while have these like $50,000 machines that made like 1 cup of coffee. I think they were called Clover machines. And then every once in a while they would get Kona coffee in from Hawaii, and then you could get like a Kona on the Clover. And that was pretty awesome because there was no way I could make that at home. But if I could make it at home, oh yeah, I would have them whenever I could, whenever they had them. Whenever they had the Kona, like,
whenever the loan officer approved.
Oh, you mean whenever I had a 50,000? Yeah, and I'm not Elon Musk.
Here comes Jim again. Why Kona on the Clover?
Yeah, I'm sleeping on the factory floor, but I want the Clover over there.
This is going to be the 5th lien on your car.
My wardrobe
dude.
is going to take up that part of the office. And
and how did it taste?
Oh, that was incredible. It was just incredible. It was like a religious experience.
Really? Was it that? I mean, you could feel it.
Yeah, it's not just that it was mild. It was, is it mild? More than mild. You're soaking in it. It was just everything coffee should be in a cup.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an endorsement.
Yeah. But they don't make it anymore. They got rid of their Clover machines.
Why?
I think probably because they were $50,000 to repair, likely, or they didn't last that long.
No, I always found it fascinating that to me, the lesson of Starbucks is the exact same lesson as McDonald's, which is, what is for me the key to McDonald's? The key is I know that no matter what McDonald's I pull into, and sausage McMuffin with egg is going to taste basically the same. It's that ability to reproduce results consistently over time and space. And same thing with Starbucks. You go the store, the locations are all the same. It's incredible consistency in the consistency of the product. And yeah, it's great. A 12-ounce cup of Pikes, baby.
Yeah,
it's like a $5 bill. Doesn't everybody in the world understands that one?
It's modeled after, the suicidal, coffee lovers in the Northwest who, it's been raining for 5 years straight. And damn it, they need a really good cup of coffee.
We need to get off the pad here, folks. So
yeah.
Pour something into that cup.
Inability to launch. Yep.
So, so I went down there and I've been very, but what we're talking about was you being in this slightly unhappy mood or combative mood when this episode should wind up on the cutting room floor in its entirety. But anyway, you seemed angry, and I can tell now. I know that after 17 minutes after I drink the coffee, I'm going to start getting really angry at people, and I just have to cut it off. It's just that, and then when you start getting angry about something, you're like, it's just the coffee. It's just me being stupid. This is so dumb. I got to think about something else. This is ridiculous. This is just self-indulgent nonsense, and so that's what I did today.
It was a great cartoon. I don't know if it's still around, called Too Much Coffee Man. It was just this character that was just a cup of coffee, and he was always kind of raging about something or other.
So I read, what did I read? I read I believe it was Sarah Elkin's suggestion, which was Planet Fall. Which is the story of a community of people living on another planet.
Right.
Which there's all kinds of secret. It's basically a lot of it is like Murder on the Orient Express or something. There's a lot of secrets. A lot of people are holding secrets, and then a stranger arrives in town and turns everything upside down. And there's a couple of curious flourishes on that. I think, as Sarah mentioned, the last thing, one of the key things is that you hate to call her the protagonist because she's not a lovable character, but the main person in the book, she's a hoarder.
Right.
And what she's consistently doing is anyway, it doesn't matter. She's hoarding.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's interesting. And the book is rather unflinching about it.
Nice.
it gets addressed over and over and over again. And what you realize when you do that, which I found somewhat uncomfortable, but also a little bit relieving, is that you realize that hoarding doesn't have to be of material objects. We can hoard ideas. And we can hoard resentments, and we can hoard embarrassments and humiliations and all that kind of stuff like that. And to a certain degree, we remember things because we're afraid that we'll lose it. If we don't remember it, it'll be lost. And the answer is probably maybe it's better that way. Maybe it's not such a bad idea after all, to let things go and just realize that you probably don't even really remember what you think you remember anymore. I mean, I've had a lot of those situations where I actually meet up with people and I say, hey, remember that time, blah, blah, blah. And they go, no, that's not at all what happened. This is what happened. Then you're like, oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, is the next day. Oh, okay. And then you're like, okay, I've been pissed off for like 20 years about something that doesn't mean anything. And so,
because memories are stories that you need to keep retelling to yourself in order to remember them, in order to keep remembering them. Mm-hmm. And as you retell it, it's a game of telephone with yourself.
Yeah, there's tape loss.
They change. Yeah,
and they change.
Tape loss.
And there's and there's my whole theory, which is that, I mean, one of the big things I've mentioned ad nauseum before is that one of the technologies I studied while doing patents was something called low density parity check coding. Cue the snore. But the interesting thing about low density parity check coding is that it's almost like black magic in the sense that you can suffer enormous degradation of the original message, and LDPC will put it back together again. Because what it does is it creates this weird sort of I don't want to get into it, but it creates this web of interdependencies between nodes. And it does it, and it reconstructs the original message through multiple passes over the same message. So what may happen is all these check nodes are tied to each other, and what happens is, if let's say you go through it and a lot of the nodes, you're not sure what value they are. You're not sure if they're 1 or 0. Your confidence level's like 10% or 20%. But let's say you have this one check node where you have a 90% confidence level that it's 90%. That's 90% of 1.
Right.
You set that to 100%, and then you run the algorithm again. And because that node is now 100%, this node that before had a 20%, you had a 20% confidence level that it was a 0. That has now bounced up to 70%.
Right.
So now you set that, and then there's these iterative passes, and you basically are recreating the information from the ground up. With LDPC, it does a very good job of doing this in a lossless manner, but I think the human brain does this too, except we do it in a lossy manner. We reconstruct memories. I don't think we remember a lot. I think actually what we do is we remember certain key bits, and then we spackle in the spaces between them with shit we make up.
Or that we try and verify with other people's faulty memory.
Yeah, but let's say we don't corroborate or triangulate.
Right.
What happens is that over time, I think this is, I haven't tested this, and I have no reason to state it as fact. I think this is true, which is that we sort of maintain some broad out, like, the name of the main character and maybe the general thrust of the plot, but the details start going soft on us.
Right.
So we make them up. Yeah. We say, oh, it's a military movie. There's a military story, so he was wearing camouflage. Mm-hmm. Well, no, he wasn't. But you just spackled that in because you're using logic and tradition and all these probabilities to try to fill the thing in. But the problem is that once you start spackling, I'm sorry, this is going on way too long. But all I'm saying is that nothing that should be a surprise to anybody. I think it's very possible that memory is incredibly faulty. But it goes back to the hoarding thing, which goes back to
hoarding memories.
Hoarding memories, hoarding objects, and why people hoard objects. So, interesting book, not a great book. Mm-hmm. There is sort of like this supernatural theme that runs over the entire thing, and there is a resolution to it, but the resolution really has nothing to do with really the rest of what's going on in the book.
Right.
It really feels sort of disconnected from what's going on in the rest of the book. But the rest of the book is very much about deceit and lies, hiding lies, and people taking revenge. So it's happy. It's a family book. It's a kids. Yeah, it's a lovely
read
book.
Read it to the kids.
Read it to the kids. See it on the big screen. So I read that, and then I read the second book of the Silo thing, which was Dust.
Right.
And I still, I still think the same thing.
Like what? That it's some kind of Christian parable?
No. I'm past that because I've talked to some other people. And they said, "Hell no. No. I don't know if they know any more than I do." But on reading the second book, it's just like I really just don't like his writing. I just don't. I mean, it's interesting what he's getting at, kinda, but it's just not. I don't know. I just don't. There's no humor. There's no humor. There's no wit. It's just grind. It's just like so many books we've read, you and I. So many of the books we've read recently, they're just relentless. They're just no fun, no funny. It's just pounding you over the head. Now, the good news is that with something like the Ministry for the Future, well, yeah, okay. It's a grim subject, and he has a lot of cred. Kim Stanley Robinson.
Yeah,
he gets the right to write a really oppressive, unrelenting book. Go for it, Kim. You're fighting the good fight. But when it's something like this, I don't even really know what the guy's getting at with the whole silo thing, and it just seems to me like another conspiracy. Our lives are being controlled by a vast conspiracy. It's like, okay, we've been hearing this for the last 50 to 70 years. And it's clever. You put them in a bunch of silos and there's, and they go out and clean the lens and all that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, I was thinking it's very interesting. Just like, a lot of stuff, a lot of things really head back to 1984 by George Orwell.
Yeah.
It's amazing how tremendous that book is. Well, it's a tremendous book, but how much flows from that? Because I don't know if there's anything quite like it before it. But he definitely introduced that whole idea of the horror of the modern world and the oppressiveness of the modern industrial totalitarian state and perpetual surveillance.
Yeah.
And that's really what the Silo trilogy boils down to. It's a surveillance state. And people are trying to rebel against the surveillance state, which is what 1984 is about. And it's about as cheery as 1984 is.
Yeah. And the moral is you can't.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. You lose.
Because they own your thoughts. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so what did you do this week?
Well, I got back on X, the Twitter. Sorry, I'm trying to draw a parallel between 1984 and X. I am moderately back on social media. I have to say, very tempted to stay off it. Now that I've been off it for a month, I recommend taking a month off, anybody who's on it. Because I'm not counting certain things as social media. What we're doing here is social media in a sense. Substack is social media, and that's another topic actually I want to bring up. But, and Patreon. Our Patreon page is patreon.com/JimInfantino. You can support the podcast and a bunch of other things that I'm doing. You're not supporting Lionel because I think Lionel doesn't need support. But if he does, I would be able to support him from. I don't have a separate Patreon for Funny Not Funny, the podcast is what I'm trying to say. It's just funny. It's just patreon.com/Jim.
It's just not funny.
It's just not funny. So yeah, I've been back. It's strange. The only one that I'm actually enjoying now a little bit is Facebook. And I guess it's just that Threads is kind of leaving me dry and it just doesn't. It's not captivating. X is just, you look at it, you look at the app and it has an X on it. And you're like, okay, I won't open that app. Yeah, right? It's like, delete this. I wonder why nobody's ever called their company X before. Well, because it means
it's what you put over the eyes of dead people.
Yeah.
It's what you do to cancel something, yes.
Not a positive thing. And I haven't looked at Instagram yet. I don't know. It's leaving me cold. I'm not feeling it. I do need to promote things, so I'm going to be there. But in terms of like sharing my thoughts, it just does not feel like a fun thing to me anymore, at least on these platforms. I don't know if there would be a platform where it would feel more fun, but none of these seem that way. Slaps is actually still kind of fun. That's a social media app.
And what distinguishes Slaps? Why is Slaps moderately intriguing, whereas the others are not?
Well, because you're not posting like it's raining, boo. You're posting a song, and then
so
people are listening.
Stream of consciousness nonsense.
Yeah. Like you've made something and you post it up there, and other people who make stuff comment on the thing that you've made in time coded to different parts of the song. So if something hits them at this point, then you get a reaction from them at that point in the song. And that's exciting. That's like Wattpad. Wattpad is great because people get to write in the margins of what you're writing. So they get to react to a paragraph. I think it doesn't get any more granular than a paragraph, but you put your stuff up, you put a chapter up, and then people read it and then they write like, where is this going? Or I really like this character or something like that. And so you're interacting with an opus. You're entering into it with an opus, and then
there's an object of focus.
Yeah,
the conversation is focused on something rather than just people doing their random stream of consciousness nonsense.
Right. Here's something I did. You put that on. So I have the new video for spinning back from the Snorri brothers in Iceland. And it's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to releasing it. But just the whole process of releasing it just feels like such a chore to me now, right? Getting it up on YouTube and then putting it on Facebook separately and putting it on all the other platforms, and then making sure that I get all the information right and all the links right and whatever tags that they need. It doesn't have the feeling like I'm listening and reacting in real time the way those other two platforms, Wattpad and Slaps, do. That's different. If there was a Slaps for videos, that would be kind of more interesting, view with comments, view without comments. The comments could overlay the video in some weird ways.
Interesting. You're talking to somebody who has absolutely zero social media involvement.
Yeah, I think
so. A lot of this is me listening to you talk about Etruscan pottery. I have no idea.
Far more interesting, Etruscan pottery. Yeah, no, I think that it's a healthier way to be. Here's the weird thing. All of August, I was off social media. July felt short to me, and August felt long. And not long in like it's taking too long. It's like my memories of August are more complete, because I wasn't putting things up as posts. I wasn't sharing pictures of everything I was doing. I wasn't sharing little comments about whatever political thing was happening. I didn't do any of that. And it's as if I've reclaimed my life from August. It's just me. It's just me and my family and my friends just interacting. So my memories are of those interactions instead of these little text interactions. So that's interesting to me. It's like the time's like slowed down. More life. Not that you have anything to compare it to, because you don't do this sort of crazy neurotic thing. Yeah, many people do. So if you have any thoughts about this, you can tweet at Lionel at don't bother, hashtag forget it. I've been reading The Magician's Nephew to the daughters.
Okay.
I had read it to them when they were maybe 5 and 7, and now I'm reading it to them again. And it's richer. It's a more grown-up book in a sense. It is also a children's story, and it's written as a children's story.
It is.
But the subject matter is pretty grown up, because the uncle, the magician, is seriously awful.
Yes.
He's just evil. And what I really loved, one part of it, I loved. I mean, the wood between the world and the description is beautiful, and the realization that it's a hallway, it's a tunnel, rather than a destination. It's great. And I've just read up to the point where they are about to drop into a different world. But what I loved was that when the uncle is describing his experiments on guinea pigs and experimenting, and having sent the girl to the other world, the protagonist, the boy, says something like, "That's an awful thing to do. What's going to happen to her?" And C.S. Lewis writes, "He looked at me like he couldn't understand what I was saying."
Yeah.
Nothing involving empathy, like that character can't comprehend thoughts about other people. He's completely self-focused.
Right. And the interesting thing, and when you reread The Magician's Nephew, you really start to see the links between it and Piranesi and the other in Piranesi, is that not only is he callous, but he's manipulative.
Yes.
And so that every bad thing that has to be done, he blames on the other person. Oh, if you don't go and rescue her, that will be on your life forever.
Right.
And you could,
which is a manipulation.
You could tell that Susanna Clarke was really, really modeling it closely after the uncle in The Magician's Nephew. I think she actually used the same name.
Not the first name, but the last name.
The last name.
Ketterly.
Yeah, Ketterly.
Yeah, and it is. It's nothing against Piranesi. It's a fascinating kind of homage in a sense. But I was really fascinated just in terms of the depth of understanding certain personality types. And it must have been somebody that C.S. Lewis had come across, that when you said something like, "But this is going to be terrible for them," they would just stare at you like you had just spouted nonsense, because it was so important to the experiment.
Yes.
That individuals were irrelevant, or maybe they were sociopaths.
Consequences are irrelevant. And there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Frankenstein and the mad scientist. The mad scientist will stop at nothing, and doesn't care what he breaks or what the consequences are of the experiment. But again, Ketterly's different, and that's where C.S. Lewis and Susanna Clarke take it one step forward. It's not that he's uncomprehending, and not just uncomprehending. He is a sociopath, and he's happy to manipulate other people.
Right, but it's written before this notion of sociopath, that sociopathy was really, in the popular milieu.
But it's just interesting how he manipulates people, and it's great. It's not just he's just an unthinking, uncaring monster who can't communicate with people. He's very good at communicating with people, and he's very good at trying to con people into doing what he wants them to do, especially by guilting them and flipping situations upside down and putting the blame on the other people, which is spine tingling. It really is. So anyway, yeah, it's good to reread those books. To a certain degree, I see Piranesi as sort of a retelling of The Magician's Nephew for an England of 1980s England. Yes.
Yeah, I can see that, but they each stand. I mean, it stands alone. It doesn't feel like a copy of anything, and it's certainly much more mature. There's a wonderful scene I'm giving. We've already given away most of the book in the last podcast, but there is a great scene where
which book are we talking about?
In Piranesi, where Valentine Ketterly has the plan to get rid of the cop and trap her in the flood.
Right.
And because he's just a certain type of intellectual, it's very clear that the plan that he has mapped out is not one that he can execute.
Right.
Right. It all worked in his mind. Oh, wow. Something going on. Did you hear that?
Yeah. A little bit.
It all worked in his mind, but it doesn't work in real life.
He can't dirty his own hands with it.
Well, no, he just doesn't have he doesn't have the dexterity. He doesn't have any training. He's mapped out a very complicated thing whereby he's going to inflate the boat and he's going to get the gun and he's going to shoot the person and get in the boat. And that, while, the room is filling with water, that's not how it's going to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I like where he tries to convince Piranesi. He says, you're probably going to have to, I think it's better if you shoot her.
Right.
He tries to convince Piranesi that really, I'm not, I shouldn't have to lower myself. I shouldn't have to dirty my hands with this. I think, you are much more adept at this. And in fact, it's probably your responsibility. In fact, you're required to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that really makes your hair stand on end, is just the unbelievable manipulativeness of this character and how beautifully she describes it. I mean, really, again, I like Susanna Clark for the reason I don't like, other people. Her sentences are great. Like, her sentences are great.
So Hugh Howey, you really don't feel you're really, so it's just it's a stylistic. It's funny you mentioned the humor thing. I think of other really heavy authors like Stephen R. Donaldson. I don't detect any humor in any of his books.
But it was clearly fantastical.
Yeah.
It was so ridiculously over the top.
It's so over the top that there's sort of a humor in that.
It's
like in all of his books, it's so beyond dramatic that you go with it.
Right. It's theater. Whereas the problem is that all the people who followed after, like Tom Clancy, is they try to make their stuff sound like a news. They try to make it sound like fact.
Right.
And they give all these details to make it sound like this actually happened. Right. And it's like, no, it's just fiction. With Stephen R. Donaldson, it's really different because with Hugh Howey, he's positing something that takes place on Earth that theoretically could happen.
Right.
It's not in the realm of, it's far less speculative than some other speculative fiction. It's not like going to the Ring world or anything like that. And so it just tends to be really kind of grinding after a while. Whereas Donaldson's thing is so ridiculous and so over the top. And the names are ridiculous. Angus Thermopylae and just the whole thing is just completely nutso. And it's just a space opera in the grand tradition. It's not funny really it's not like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Ha ha ha. It's not that at all. Right. But it's like the ring cycle of Wagner. You take it all in one sitting, and it's performed by a bunch of people who are completely out of their minds.
It's odd too. You take somebody like Neil Stephenson, and there is a sense of humor there.
There is,
like with Termination Shock, and mostly it's how the characters are drawn. So that certainly goes a long way.
Yes. If it wasn't for that, I think Stevenson would be basically unreadable. What the key thing I remember from him that made me laugh out loud was I don't think it was Snow Crash. It was another one.
The Diamond Age, or
no, it wasn't Diamond Age. It was another. Maybe it was Snow Crash, but the one where the guy's talking about he's in the Philippines. He's a contractor for a startup, and he talks about
Cryptonomicon.
Is that what it is? I thought
Cryptonomicon. He said a data. Oh, it's 1700s. Oh no,
no. I thought Cryptonomicon was 1700s. I'm talking the passage I'm talking about takes place in the present day, and the guy's for a startup company that's building a fiber optic network throughout the Pacific to enable expatriate workers to remit payments. But that's like a footnote to the entire thing. But what the piece is about is he's like this contract worker living in, I think, Manila. And it's like a 2-page description about eating Captain Crunch in the Philippines. And he says, you have to get the milk so cold that just merely by squeezing the container will cause it to enter into its crystalline form. He says, and he talks about the whole thing, and it's just this 2-page digression on how to pour the Captain Crunch in the bowl, because it's it's blast furnace hot outside.
Right,
It's like 105 degrees and 90% humidity. And he says, you put the thing, you do this, and you have to wait to the precise moment, because if you do it too early, the Captain Crunch will scrape the roof of your mouth. But if you wait too long, it'll all turn into, and it's just, and I thought, okay, dude, I'm going to cut you some slack on this one, because
it's pretty great.
This is really funny.
Right.
And that's when you see like little, what do they call it? What do they call it in the diamonds? What do they call it when something's embedded in the diamond?
I don't.
Inclusions. Inclusions. There's I see little fragments of Mark Lehner embedded in William Gibson and Stevenson and other people, but definitely, certainly, that whole thing about eating Captain Crunch was just great.
Yeah, a little Lehner goes a long way.
A little Lehner goes a long way, baby.
It's strong stuff.
But I found, again, that's one of the overarching, this whole podcast thing has forced me to read a lot of books.
Yeah, me too.
And sometimes you learn something about yourself, and it's like, boy, when there's no humor, it's really humorless. Like when there's absolutely no wit and no humor. And some of these books just really feel like people just like building a cinder block building. It's like, okay, here comes this chapter, and I got to do this, and here comes this plot element.
That's. I think some of that has to do with being on deadline. Doesn't it seem like? And a good editor would say, "Look, you need to spice this up. This, you can't just, recount what happened. It's not enough to recount what happened. That's not actually a story." Now, what was it? Malcolm Gladwell said, "There's a difference between a story and an anecdote. In an anecdote, there's no turn. He doesn't put it that way, but there's no betrayal. In a story, there's a betrayal, and not literal narrative betrayal, but there's a betrayal of the expectations that are set up in the story, so that the reader is surprised.
Yeah, it's O. Henry. It's the trick ending to the story. It's the punchline. It's the surprise. And yes, I agree with that.
A sting,
Right.
And without that, you've just got anecdotes strung together. I went to the store, and they were all out of milk.
Yeah.
Not really. It's almost a story because I didn't expect that, but
right.
Listing the contents of your freezer is not a story.
Yeah, it's not a story. And we could go. I could go on and on about this, but it helps when there's a little bit of humor. There's a ton of humor in Piranesi.
Yeah,
there's a ton of incredibly refined wit.
Yeah,
in Piranesi, and the trick is to really appreciate a lot of it. You have to read The Magician's Nephew. You have to know about Aleister Crowley. It helps a lot, even if you know the littlest bit about Aleister Crowley and the whole British occult movement during the 1960s and 70s. All you need to do is read a paragraph from Wikipedia. You need to be in that British vibe. It's Monty Python. It's Harry Potter. It's all
Douglas
those people.
Adams.
Douglas Adams, J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, all of them. And they're all talking in her book. And she has her own voice, but it really helps a lot. There's just some great, 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 great wit and humor in some of those and it's very subtle. It's almost hard to quote. It's almost impossible to quote it.
Yeah, well, some of it, you can't tell. Sometimes the humor is almost, it's Eric Palin's, an old saying that, comedy is just tragedy inverted, or comedy is tragedy with a kind of a sting to it.
Right.
But some of I would probably include in humor, maybe the broader definition of humor in some of these, because tenderness and sadness contribute to that.
Yes.
There's in one of Donaldson's books, in the Gap series, there's this sad character that is sort of ineffectual throughout. And they do this immensely huge thing, which is they swallow a spaceship in a black hole. And it's horrifyingly sad. But there's something about the way it's written that
feels almost humorous, triumphant, or
triumphant, and it's tragic.
I don't know what section you're. I don't remember this one at all.
There's a character who launches a black hole at a spaceship, but he's got to travel along with the black hole.
Oh, okay.
And they're like, you know what you're doing? Yeah, suck them all into a black hole. And with knowing the character, right? Exactly. It's kind of comical, but it's awful, right?
Right.
And there's a lot
triumphant. It's somebody dying for a cause,
right?
That shows up in so many places. That meme shows up all over the place. But yeah, humor helps a lot. So anyway, those are the two books I read. I wanted to get I want to put the stake through Dracula's heart. I wanted to buy the third Silo book and just get it over with. But honestly, like the Kindle version is $18.
Mm-hmm.
There's no
it's so popular right now.
Yeah, it's just like honestly, it doesn't really mean all that terribly much to me.
Really it's not. I think it's just not your thing. If you're not into his writing, I mean, I enjoyed it, but if you're not into his writing, then
who knows? I mean, I'll see him through to the end. I'll check the third book, maybe the middle book. I don't know. Sometimes people put on a burst to see him. God knows, I sat through a lot of William Gibson books that were less than thrilling. So I'll see Hugh to the end. This is a movie. Sorry, this is a really hideous podcast. This is a movie that is on Amazon Prime right now. That is an old movie that probably you watched when you were 12 years old, because that's when I saw it too. And then I rewatched it probably about 20 years ago. And I only watched it a couple nights ago because I was completely desperate for anything to watch. And I wasn't going to watch The Croods, and I wasn't going to watch some reality TV. So I watched The Day of the Jackal.
The Day of the Jackal.
From 1973, which was a movie adaptation of the astoundingly successful Frederick Forsyth book, The Day of the Jackal, which was sort of one of the founding books of the whole Bourne identity. The internet, it has an international scope, and it's these professional killers and these professional spies who chase each other. And today it's Barcelona, tomorrow it's Tunisia, and all that stuff. And The Day of the Jackal was really one of the first of those, and sort of spawned a lot of the genre. And I remember watching it. It's a fun book. I mean, it's a fun movie. It's really cool. It's kind of dated. And so I was just going to watch saying, look, I already know what everything happens in here. And I know, he gets the rifle, and I know they do this and they do that. It did not prepare me at all when I watched it again. It was great.
Great.
It was a great, fabulous, fabulous movie, because you start to appreciate the movie making.
Right.
And you start to appreciate they had these enormous crowd scenes in Paris. Like these huge parades around the Champs-Élysées, around the Arc de Triomphe, like thousands of people. They couldn't have staged that. It had to have been that there was actually a real live event going on, because they had like battalions marching by. So they must have had guys with cameras running between them and stuff like that. And it's a really, really good film. So I recommend it. It's 2.5 hours. But as because I read about it afterwards, as Roger Ebert says, it goes by in about 10 minutes.
Wow.
I don't think it goes by in 10 minutes. I think it goes by in about 2 hours. But it doesn't really feel like it feels like Bridge Over the River Kwai, which is a long ass movie, but it feels okay because it's such a fabulously well made movie that you're okay with it. But it's just it's just, you can tell there's a lot of love that went into the film. It's just great cinematography. The plot moves along. It's great film. So I don't know if it really links into anything else. That was a film that had no humor.
So that reminds me that a common friend of ours, or a classmate of yours, recommended that I check out the books of another classmate of ours, Robert Whitehill, who I don't know whether I think he might have been my year, which would make sense if you didn't know him. I don't think he was your year at Ford. But I'm going to read a book called Dead Rise by Robert Whitehill. And I think it's along these lines of The Day of the Jackal. So it's a bit of a genre change for me, more of a thriller. than
Right. Than
yeah.
a sci-fi kind of thing.
Yeah. But
Well,
I
read
did
too.
Yeah. So that if you want. Anyway, he's an acquaintance, so he might come on the pod if we both read his book.
Did you ever read any of the? Did you ever read like any John le Carré?
I haven't. I think I read Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
That's a big ass book. Yeah. It's a hard book to get through.
Isn't that the one where he ends up with the Afghans? No, there's one where he ends up in Afghanistan.
That's not
that one.
Soldier Spy.
The Spy Who Came In From the Cold.
Well, Spy Who Came In From the Cold was le Carré's breakthrough hit, and was made into a movie with Richard Burton. Famous movie, very good movie. But no, it all takes place in Berlin in the 1950s. So Afghan's not part of it. I mean, le Carré wrote, I forget how many, but it's probably close to 40 books.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to keep them apart. But did you ever read any of the Bourne books? I
didn't read the Bourne books. I watched the movies because
there's the Bourne books. Was great in them. And then there's Frederick Forsyth, and there's a whole bunch of guys who created this. And then there's the guy, forget the guy who wrote the book, The Odessa File. These are all guys writing in the 60s and 70s who sort of single-handedly created like this whole genre of like, the Nazi hunters. That was a big theme too, hunting down the boys from Brazil. That's a famous book about Nazi hunters, guys from Israel hunting down the last of the Nazis. Much of it fantastical, but it's sort of the stew out of which a lot of this stuff grew. There's also Mission Impossible, which was a big 1960s television series, using a lot of the same themes: technology, international, trickery, deception, deceit, treachery, spies, governments, all that kind of stuff. Even the 007 movies, the James Bond stuff, to a certain degree, fed into all that. Again, technology, trickery, deception, saving the world, all that kind of nonsense. So, Dead Rise by Robert Whitehill. Robert
Blake Whitehill. And he let's see, X'd me. He said, have some fun with Dead Rise. Maynard Chalk is a scene-stealing baddie, so I'm told. Sort of Hyacin wrote Bourne.
Oh, Carl Hyacin wrote the Bourne stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, Hyacin, like Hyaasen. Right, Carl Hyacin from Florida. Have you read any of his stuff?
No.
Carl Hyacin is. So do you know Tony Hillerman?
Yes.
Okay, so Tony Hillerman is like this guy who writes basically murder mysteries, fairly light touch cop stories, all based in New Mexico. Tony Hillerman is all about New Mexico and the indigenous people in New Mexico. A lot of it takes place on the reservations and in the various places. Carl Hyacin is all Florida, and it's all really fun. And Hyacin is pretty darn funny. And he actually wrote a whole bunch of series of kids' books based in Florida, which are pretty, they actually may be a little too kid-like for your daughters yet, but I remember reading them with Lily, and they're actually pretty good. I think one's called Scat. They're all like one-syllable words. But I think he wrote at least 3 of them, Carl Hyacin. They're young adult or kids' books that take place in Florida. And they're basically the same as his grown-up books. It's some nutty adventure. It's some weird thing with some MacGuffin, like there's, the last of the Everglades ocelots is missing. Where did it go? And then it just becomes like, a wacky cast of characters all chasing, it's like, it's a mad world taking place in the Everglades.
Then this could be fun. I mean, sort of if Hyacin wrote Bourne.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this might be a nice diversion.
Yeah, nice junction. Might tie together a whole bunch of things. It'd be interesting to see what threads he's pulling on.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
I did see Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves.
Do you still consider me a friend?
You owe me.
You owe me big time.
No, I have to say, it was a bit of a piece of trash, but also sweet. You know, kind of sweet and fun, and you know, yeah. I mean, I don't know how many tomatoes I would give it. It was certainly not a waste of time to watch. It was fun. It was just like
it was just entertainment.
Yeah, it was popcorn.
Pure and simple.
Pure,
and it wasn't trying to like establish any bigger themes. It wasn't trying to like enforce ideas about the sanctity of the ecosphere. It was just like we're on a mad chase here.
Yeah,
and we're trying to get to the other end.
And it's funny though, you know, using the name Dungeons and Dragons, it sort of made sense. They could have done more with that because the main character is a 7th level bard. You know, the kind of character that gets killed immediately in a campaign. A bard. What can you do? I can play the lute. You know,
die.
I can hit you with the lute. And that's roughly what Chris Pine's character does. He's like the lowest level possible. And you've got a magician or a wizard who can only cast like magic missile, 1. And then he has to kind of find the confidence to be a better wizard. Did you do Dungeons and Dragons? I did. I loved it. Yeah.
So I guess it must be a much different experience for you because I didn't catch any of that stuff.
Yeah. Right. So then I sort of recognized you had sort of the warrior, you had the paladin. There were a number of funny things. I mean, the paladin is really good at everything and is lawful good.
Which one is the paladin?
The paladin is they meet up with him to get. They have to get something, and
right. He's the one that everybody. He's one of the bad people. He's one of the red priest people.
Yeah,
he was, but he escaped, and he's going around like saving babies. And
so he's chaotic evil, and now he's lawful good. And right, he saves babies, and he's just good at everything. He's like a 10th level paladin or whatever in Dungeons and Dragons speak. But there's this moment when they realize that he's really no fun to talk to.
Oh, and he doesn't understand metaphor or anything.
No sarcasm.
Like
you can't do sarcasm. Not allowed to. Really, it doesn't fit the lawful good.
He's like
profile.
Dax from Guardians of the Galaxy.
He says, "Well, then I'll leave you with a story to go." And Chris Pine's character says, "Okay, goodbye." He walks away, and they're like, he walks in a straight line. Is he going to go around the rock? Is he going to go around the rock? Nope, he's going over the rock. He walks in a straight line. They're like so sick of him. So that was really funny. I mean, that really, felt like D&D to me. But, the rest of it was just like any other kind of Disney movie.
Right. But a lot of those movies, sometimes I watch them and they're kind of cloying. Like they annoy me on other levels. This movie didn't. This movie, I think, was acutely aware. Sort of like, I mean, of course, the most cringe-inducing movie in the world, but also I found there are a lot of people on this planet who secretly love this movie, which is The Fifth Element.
I love that movie.
Yeah, and it's just The Fifth Element. It's not trying to do anything. It's not trying to do anything. And even when it gets serious, it's like, okay, yeah, war's bad. We're good with that one.
Right.
But other than that, it's just basically a French bedroom farce that takes place over several planets, and like that's it. And I felt that same way. I felt that same sort of lightness of touch with Dungeons and Dragons. At least they know they are. And what I think is interesting is that you liked it, you didn't hate it, and I liked it.
Yeah.
And I don't know zippo about Dungeons and Dragons, the game itself. So that in itself is perhaps a bit of an accomplishment.
That's probably on purpose. I mean, really, if you only made a movie for Dungeons and Dragons players, you'd have 5 people show up at the theater. I mean, it's bigger than that, but you'd have thousands of people rather than what you want, which is hundreds or millions.
Well, I think I may have mentioned this is that I was watching either the first, I think it was the second Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph wrecks the internet. And there's one point where he's floating inside some kind of sphere and he has to get to the inner core of the sphere. And to get in, he has to do a combination. And there's these buttons. and they're like the cursor buttons on the thing. He says, yeah, you have to hold down shift and do left, right, up button. And there's like 20 people in the audience who broke out in hysterical laughter. And I think what it is like, it was this well-known like cheat code.
Yeah, for like Zelda.
Yeah, something like with some kind of control that some kind of physical control. Like there's this one thing that everybody knew was the thing you did to get like 20 extra gold or something like
God
that.
mode, yeah.
And I thought that's really hilarious. Like there's a bunch of people for whom this is an immensely funny. To me, I was just like, yeah, okay. What did I miss here?
An Easter egg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
so we've overstayed our welcome, right? It's 6:37.
I think around minute 5 we were overstaying our welcome. I did just come from I was invited to be like a guest speaker at a university event by one of my guys. I used to be an RA at Bennington College, and he reached out to me and said, I teach English. Would you like to do an English tea where you can talk about writing songs and all the different things you do, and then take questions from my class, and I did, and that's actually where I was coming from. That's why I was late today, but it was delightful. Steve Engel. I got to talk about myself for quite a long while. I hope it was valuable to the students there. None of the students asked me any questions. It was all the other teachers in the room, but
really,
the grown-up
students didn't ask anything.
They didn't. No. And I gave them a lot of prompts, but not really.
Yeah, it's funny. I got a text message from my daughter earlier this afternoon, and she says, "What object represents me?"
What?
And I wrote back. I said, "I'm not." I usually don't think of people as being representable by objects.
Right.
She wrote back and says, "It's for an assignment." I said, "Okay, can opener." If that's all the context you're giving me,
right?
Okay, here's an object. But yeah, academia, gotta love it. What object represents you? Let's talk about the premise of the question to begin with before I even offer an answer. I mean, it's like
the Grand Canyon. I'm not. Is that an object?
The charm quark? I mean, what are you talking about? The antipositron photino or something? I don't know. It's just ridiculous.
I am the subject, not the object.
Yeah, that's just hurl some Zen at them and just baffled with bullshit.
So the class, they're literally asking the students to objectify themselves?
Who knows what? Who knows? I'm getting it from her, which already there's about 5 layers of telephone right there. So who knows what's actually going on? Dad,
I need the thing.
Can't you think of an object? It's like, why do I have to come up with objects here? This is the horror of instantaneous communication. It's like, go do your homework yourself.
This is not a hard assignment.
Come on,
shouldn't have to go to your dad for this.
Yeah, just look out the window. I spy with my little eye.
Yeah.
I'm a Venetian blind. Why? I don't know. Whatever.
There you go. Acorn. I'm an acorn.
Yeah, that's a good one.
There we go. I'm a lotus flower.
Sorry, that one's taken. Okay. But yeah, it was fun. She called me a couple of days ago and said, "Do you want to just get out of here for a while?" I said, "Yeah, okay." So we got in the car and we drove around, and we went to a town nearby called Cazenovia, and these are beautiful towns. And visited a brewery there, had a beer, then we jumped in the car again, and we drove over to Skidiatalis is how they
that's where my friend Barry Crimmins is from.
So we went there. That's a beautiful town. I mean,
I have a sweatshirt that says Skidiatalis on it.
I mean, they look like sets from a movie production of Our Town by Thornton Wilder. I mean, they're just ridiculous. It's just like you're expecting one of them to fall over.
Barry Crimmins would always say, "I'm from a little town in upstate New York called Skidiatalis, which is a Native American word that means beautiful lake surrounded by fascists."
It's a beautiful lake. It's a god awful beautiful lake.
Yep.
And there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money around that lake. I mean, just impossibly manic. I mean, just beautiful, really nice. But so anyways, we had a great time driving around. One of the benefits of living close to your daughter at college.
Yeah, that's great.
She just said, look, I need to get out of here. It's been, because she got there and she immediately got COVID. So she missed like the first 4 days of class.
Oh, God.
And she was very upset about that until she realized that everybody else had COVID too.
Right.
There's a huge COVID thing.
Yeah, it's a surge. It's a surge. Yeah. We'll see what's going on here.
And and so I think it sort of threw her off a little bit. And it's also really hot here.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the 90s.
Yeah, it was in New York City too. I got reports.
And there's no air conditioning here, and there's no air conditioning in their dorms. Oh. So I think that's sort of contributing to her angst.
Kind of hard to focus when you're
sticking to your sticking to your bed. And so she says, "Can we just go somewhere?" I said, "Yeah, I'll come by and pick you up."
She wanted to go somewhere because your car has air conditioning.
No, that probably didn't hurt, but I think she just wanted. I think it's tough. It's tough. I remember when I first came to Haverford, I had a miniature breakdown.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And I think she's having one too. And on top of that, she had COVID, and on top of that, a bunch of other things. And she says, look, I got to get out of here. And so as a father, you think to yourself, well, should I really intervene here? Or is this part of the growing thing? And then the other part of me said, fuck
take it. No, enjoy. Yeah,
come on, kid, jump in. Let's get out of here. I need it too, quite frankly. I need to get out of the house, and we need to drive around and see what's going on around here. Work isn't everything, which is my problem. School isn't everything, which is a lesson she needs to learn. Work is not everything. That's a lesson I need to learn. So we both learned that by jumping in a car and driving around and just seeing where the road took us. And it took us some really nice places. So that was fun. It was good. It was really positive. So have we come to the end of the runway now?
Oh yeah. We are off the runway. We've skidded, rolled slowly off the runway.
Yeah.
The pilot's asleep. Yes. I had one other thing.
This is like Monty Python.
And this is just technical. I'm thinking about moving our entire podcast to a different platform, moving it to Substack.
Instead of what?
So it's too technical.
This is distribution issues, right?
It's a distribution issue.
Oh,
I'm distributing it myself off of our website right now, but I think there are advantages to distributing it through Substack, and I'm just going to figure out what it takes and pull the trigger with that. We'll get better metrics, and I'll be able to, post the episodes with the references there, but I also want to maintain the website. I'm making more work for myself, basically, is what I'm doing. But that's not, if one of our listeners has a horror story and they're like, no, don't move your distribution to Substack, I want to hear about it. So let me know on patreon.com/JimInfantino. You can try me on Facebook, Jim Infantino, facebook.com/Jinfantino maybe. And I probably won't be checking X that often. But you can always email jim@bigego.com and I'll get that. And if you have any questions for Lionel or myself, please do feel free to send us an email at jim@bigego.com. I think it's also funnynotfunny@bigego.com. I can check that quickly here. Nope, it's jim@bigego.com. So we'd love to have another mailbag session. Send in your comments or questions, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Cool.
All right, Lionel.
Good night.
Good night. Funny Not Funny podcast is produced by me, Jim Infantino. This clip from the album Utopia Revisited. We are found wherever podcasts are found. Visit our website at funnynotfunny.bigego.com. Please tell your friends and leave a rating or review.